Chapter 18 of The Meaning of Life and Other Essays by Archbishop Alban Gutierrez J. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Judith. 3 Types, Part 2. If in the natural order it is true that men in the making fall under 3 types more or less, equally is it true in the supernatural. The spiritual side of man has its counterpart in the material. The natural virtues are not wholly distinct from the supernatural. They need but readjustment for grace to make them the same. The whole man is neither the one nor the other, but is both combined. Christ our Lord came not to destroy but to perfect. Grace does not eliminate human nature, but takes what it finds, lifts it up, and the methods of growth along both planes are parallel. The man of no natural spirit will never make a saint, neither will the man who, with all his spirit, nevertheless seeks his own ends, however seemingly good those ends may be. It is only the hero, even judged by natural standards, that will do supernatural deeds of heroism. This at first may sound a hard saying, but is heroism easy, and is sanctity different from any other kind of heroism? If it were, there would be many more saints, as Saint Teresa very clearly told her followers. But whether it is hard or not is beside our present point. We would rather examine the parallel that exists between the supernatural life and the natural. How the 3 types seen in the one are no less seen in the other. Of these, the first includes a large number, perhaps the greatest number of all. It may not at once be easily distinguished. At the outset, the spiritual life is often smooth enough and offers little opportunity for seeing differences. We begin with our first notions of what is good and right. With these first notions, human nature easily concurs, for, in spite of all that is said against it, human nature in itself is good and tends to goodness. When supernaturalized, it still remains complacent, so long as it is left alone. But grace has a way of being troublesome. It never leaves a soul quite satisfied with itself or with the smooth and easy path it is treading. It is forever asking for more. It is not content with an oblation that costs the giver nothing. It tells the soul that receives it, the only gift to God worth giving is the gift that He Himself desires. That is the only gift worthy of a man. When that is realized, then comes the rub. Then one can begin to see to which type a soul makes up its mind to belong. Or rather, we should say that the first type is of those who never make up their minds at all. There is a calling of grace in their hearts, but its words convey no meaning to their minds. They hear it, as it were, at a distance, but they make no effort to draw near. They may suspect its message, but they cannot be quite sure, and they prefer to remain in doubt. If they listened more carefully, they might know, but they suspect that the knowledge might, just here and just now, be inconvenient. Of course, they do not utterly wish to reject the call. They would not be accused of throwing God's grace away. Some day they mean to be better men. Some day they will set about it in good earnest. Even now, if they knew what precisely had to be done, they would try to do it. But for the present, they do not know. For the present, they have other things on hand, and they can only act according to their lights. So they argue with themselves, with their backs turned to the light, seeing darkness, where in reality is only their own shadow. So the morning of life expands into the noontide, and the laborer stands idle. The noon draws on to evening, and he tells himself that now it is too late. He will try again tomorrow, but the tomorrow on which he will begin never dawns. There is a second type of spiritual mindedness, of all the one that makes most show of it being in earnest, but also the one that is most apt to proclaim its disappointment and failure. The man belonging to this type has grasped well the meaning and the fascination and the glory and the fruitfulness of the supernatural life. He has recognized the greatness of the saints, the whole new world opened up by the insight of prayer, the invincible strength that is developed by personal independence and self-renunciation. the successfulness of failure, the joy of suffering, the might of littleness, and all the other paradoxes which are to the Jews a stumbling block and to the Gentiles foolishness, but unto them that are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. He has recognized all this, and he has determined that he will be a member of this camp. He will take hold of the spiritual, of the supernatural. He will bring it into his life. He will adapt his life to this perspective. He will advance in spiritual experience, in prayer, in mortification, in good works, in self-sacrifice, in knowledge and love of God. Indeed, he has long since done so. Already he has made many an effort. He has a worthy list of sacrifices to show, a worthy record of battles that he has fought. If he cannot boast of many glorious victories, not many elevations in prayer, not many consolations in his work, he rests on the assurance of spiritual writers who tell him that this may in itself be a mark of divine approval. But there is one exception in it all. A man of this caliber is exposed to one great danger, and few indeed are those who escape it. It pursues everyone who aspires to the spiritual end. It pursues everyone to the end. Not only does it hide itself successfully, it pleads with a pathos that can scarcely be resisted that it is no danger, that it is human nature's rightful rest. One who can determine what he will do can also determine what he will not. He can make up his mind what he will win, but he can also settle with himself what shall be the price beyond which he will not go. He can reason pros and cons, profits and losses, advantages and their opposites, and he can tell himself, without using any words, almost without letting himself know that he is hinting it, that there are certain things, there is at least one certain thing, he cannot forego, no matter what may be the prize at stake. Some things, he says, are now part of himself, or at least part of the oneness of his life. To part with them would not be generosity. It would be foolish, almost suicidal, perhaps even tempting God. In any case, God could not be so hard as to demand this superhuman sacrifice. Other things he can bring himself to surrender. He can even give God an equivalent in kind. This one thing he cannot. It is too trifling, it is too much his own. The power that asks it asks for more than human nature is capable of giving. So he goes on, affecting to be convinced that he is justified, unaffectedly refusing to admit the possibility of error. He does not argue the matter. It is safer to assume that there can be no other side. Against this one tiny atom that he retains for himself, he puts the many things, the great things he has given, and is still ready to give, and he satisfies himself that if everything is not wholly on his side, at least all events the balance is overwhelmingly in his favor. So he goes on, from beginning to end. In most cases, he will not be distinguishable from others. He will make progress in his way. He will be a good man according to his lights, as the phrase goes. If he fails in this point or that, it will be put down to his weakness of human nature. In all this he will be like his fellow men. Even the saints must be given some kind of margin, and whether or not he responds to the one grace that matters, who can tell? That none but his own soul can answer, and even his soul, if he is persistent and determined, can be put to silence. If he will but refuse to hear, there comes at least a time when hearing is scarcely possible. In noise and confusion, or with muffling and deadening of sound, cry may be cut off altogether. Such is the second type, the type of failures, great and small. It has many grades, from great sinners who will do all but give up their dominating passion, to those on the verge of sanctity who fail because of some trifling bondage to step across the border. But for all alike, whether they be sinners or potential saints, it is unworthy. The third type alone is noble. It is no less ambitious than its predecessor. Indeed, it is more. It has made up its mind no less. It has done more. But it differs from the other in this, that it must put no limit to the price that may be demanded. It has no secret possession of its own, no heirloom or treasure with which it will not part. It has lost itself and its own claims in the vast otherness of this world and the next. Or, rather, it has lost itself and this world besides in the vast otherness of the next. Eterna, non caduca, said one little hero fired with this understanding. Quid hoc ad eternitatem, said another. And life, according to that motto, produced heroism of the very highest grade. Such a life does not merely keep back anything for itself, it forgets that there is anything to keep, or that there is a self to serve. Man loves and honors selflessness. There is no selflessness to match that which has drowned itself in eternity. End of chapter 18. Recording by Judith.